All right.
This is the Doug Gottlieb Show. This is America's longest-running afternoon drive sports radio show, broadcasting live from the studios of Fox Sports Radio.
Bang, bang, won't stop till we're legends.
Here's Doug Gottlieb.
But what I find to be fascinating about LeBron a week ago, last week, hosting this show, hosting the Dan Patrick Show, we were reacting to the news that LeBron James is going to be an LA Laker, leaving behind Cleveland the second time around. And what was fascinating is how everyone has overcorrected for their past mistakes, right? Like in the past, LeBron has had a big show and it's caused a big stir and he's had a big article. This time it was call the Lakers, get on a G5 and fly to Europe with your wife. In the past, Dan Gilbert has gone Sherman and burned everything down to the sea. This time it was, hey, dude, thanks for everything. Come back anytime. Everyone has overcorrected. The Oklahoma City Thunder didn't want to go into the tax famously with James Harden. So up until the time to which they buy out Carmelo Anthony, they're $150 million into the tax. Forget about the salaries. Over $300 million in salaries. And though they will save some money when they eventually part ways with Melo, the fact is they'll still be in the tax. They've overcorrected for their past mistakes. But what's the most interesting part about relationships, quite honestly, is post-divorce breakup stories. Not how they broke up, but why. No one shares the good stories about the marriages that make it. Right? They just don't. No one says like, yeah, we're in year 45 of marriage, but man, for the first 35 years, I hated her guts and she hated mine. Now we sleep in separate bedrooms and we just stay married to say we stay married. Nobody does that. When you get divorced and you have divorce, the reason that people don't go to court is they don't want full disclosure. They don't want to know. They don't want all of their idiosyncrasies on trial. They don't want all their failures as a husband or a wife to be made into public record. Especially when you're celebrities. That's what's happened with LeBron as he's left Cleveland. Every time he's left somewhere, you've gotten a little bit different sense of who he is and what and how you feel about it. Even Dan Gilbert, who by all accounts seems to be a fairly miserable dude, right? He's worth like $6-7 billion. And people will say, well, look, he's miserable because his NBA team just lost a substantial evaluation because they lost LeBron James. Two things you should know. One, yes, it will lose its value, but they'll probably actually make money this year as opposed to losing money going into the tax the last couple of years. And two, and this is really, really important, the guy owns Quicken Loans. He's worth $5 billion without the team. Everybody wants to make money and win championships and be competitive, and it's an ego thing to own a pro team, but this is not his major source of revenue. Don't worry about Danny Boy. He'll be just fine. But we start to learn more about guys. And I find the Kyrie Irving divorce, which is now almost a year since it's been consummated, I find that to be really interesting because here we are again with LeBron James going to play with a young, unproven team. Right? That's what happened when he went back to Cleveland. Sure, he brought in Kevin Love, and there were some other pieces that were added. But when he first went to Cleveland, that was a young and very unproven team. And almost overnight, they were turned around. Jason Lloyd has covered him. So too is Joe Varden. Joe Varden's covered him for Cleveland.com. Jason Lloyd said, quote, I will freely admit the relationship between James and Irving was worse than I thought. The Kyrie-LeBron relationship was worse than I thought. I told LeBron that on opening night. I said, you guys did a great job of fooling me. I had no idea. And I won't tell you exactly what his response was, but he more or less agreed that it was not a good relationship between the two of them. The little brother thing did annoy the crap out of Kyrie. Joe Varden, Cleveland.com, also a local radio host. LeBron did all kinds of stuff to Kyrie, almost like hazing, just the kind of way in which he would treat him, the things he would say to him, the things he would say about him. I think certainly that's part of it. You know, Kyrie resented how much attention, how much power, how much sway LeBron had within the organization on a number of levels. Again, we've all allowed LeBron to say we shouldn't have traded Kyrie, but he did absolutely nothing to keep him here until it was too late. When it came out, there was a whole month before anybody had any idea that the trade was going to be Boston. LeBron didn't do anything. There was no love lost between them. These historical notes are really important because if this fails in LA, or if it fails in LA because they're not good enough, LeBron James will somehow avoid criticism, avoid critique. Look, I don't know how much of the blame pie, you want to go blame pie, LeBron deserves for the fact that they didn't win more in Cleveland, they didn't win more in Miami, or what they will do in LA. It's a no-brainer for the Lakers to go after LeBron. But the part to which you got to be cautious of, and I think Magic and Rob Pelinka are cautious of, is how much power, how much pull, how much do you listen to him? If you don't listen to him, he will shut down on you. He will pout on you. If you do listen to him, oftentimes that can create a wedge between him and whoever else is on the team, especially a young star. If you do listen to him, it also lessens your power. Remember, when you hear Dan Gilbert say, I got my team back, whether that's real or whether that's kind of an inflated statement that some have said they've heard Dan Gilbert say, you understand that though Dan Gilbert can be small and petty, the fact is there is some reality to it. LeBron's one of those guys that wants things to happen, and then when they happen, he acts like, oh, what are you talking about? You know what LeBron does? You see it in European soccer. You see it with the influence of European players in the NBA. I don't know if you ever seen this, where guys will be super, super physical, right? With their lower body, they'll stick out a knee, a hip, a groin, an elbow. And then when the ref's looking, they got their hands up like, what? I didn't do anything. Do you know that look? You see it at times on, what are they called in soccer? Set pieces? On corners, right? Where they're pushing, they're shoving, they're grabbing, they're kneeing each other, they're elbowing each other, and the ref looks like, what? I didn't do anything. I did nothing. That's really the European influence on the NBA. It's not just the flopping, it's the using all different parts of your body and keeping your hands where the refs can see him and then act like he didn't do anything. That's LeBron. That's what he did with Kyrie. He rode Kyrie, and then even after they won a championship, he wanted Kyrie traded for his boy, Chris Paul. Then when it came back around to him, he's like, what? I didn't do anything. I didn't trade him. I didn't want him traded. I didn't want him traded to Boston. I didn't want him. We were good. We were in the finals. We came back from 3-1, and then last year we lost to the Warriors. Like, what? He's done this with multiple coaches. He didn't get David Blatt fired, but he didn't save him. He didn't get David Griffin fired, but he didn't save him. If you want to say he didn't fire David Griffin, that's fine. You can live by that lie. But the truth is that if LeBron James picks up the phone and calls Dan Gilbert and says, Dan, if you don't re-sign David Griffin, I'm not playing this year. Guess what? Guess who's going to be gainfully employed with the Cleveland Cavaliers? That's power. So I think the learning from the dysfunction within the Kyrie-LeBron relationship, why that ended, it also gives you clarity on Kyrie. Got so many nonsensical lies told about Kyrie. Well, he wanted to be his own guy. He wanted to have his own show. I know from 3 sources he wanted to go 2 places. He wanted to go to San Antonio or Boston. Why? Because he thought you could win there because they have really good coaches. Wait. He wanted to go there because he'd be the face of the team. Not really. He wanted to go there because those are professionally run organizations. You don't have LeBron making calls, going through Rich Paul, who represents half the team. LeBron's boy ends up being the coach, and there's the can I coach him, can I not coach him? We're not going to practice anymore because LeBron doesn't want to practice, so it's really hard to get together and to have kind of one mindset in the game. I'm not sitting here telling you LeBron James stinks, far from. I'm telling you it's really interesting what he's become as a guy who comes in and immediately energizes your franchise, give you a chance to win a championship, fills up the arena, and plays at as high a level as anybody's played in the last 15 years in the NBA. There is a downside. He's manipulative. And then he does this, he does that thing, what's it called, where he does things without taking ownership over them. You remember when LeBron said this?
Try to do whatever I could do to help the kid out, be the best player he can be. And I wish the kid great health. The kid wanted to do what was best for his, for his career. And, I try to do whatever I could, just try to help the kid be as great as he could be or as great as he wanted to be. And, and that's it. Yeah.
Words do, in fact, matter. Okay? They do matter. And though he may think calling Kyrie Irving a kid is a way of expressing, amen, he's only, at the time, 25 years old. Now he's 26. Got a world in front of him. He can play for 10 more years at a super high level. But when you're 25 years old, when you've hit the game-winning shot in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, when you're a perennial all-star and a member of Team USA, you know what I'm not anymore? I'm not a child. So, as we look back to what happened in Cleveland, it's like reading divorce proceedings. I have no doubt in my mind. I said this on my show and on Colin's show last year. I would tell you the nail in the coffin had nothing to do with basketball, with him and the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James came out in full support of Hillary Clinton, and Dan Gilbert put his money and support behind President Trump. And if you want to tell me like that doesn't happen, how many relationships have you lost over this presidency? How many friendships have you lost? I guarantee at minimum one, and there is no maximum. Even if you haven't told your friend they're not your friend anymore, I'm guessing there are people, just post something on your Facebook page. Either side. You will lose a couple of friends over this. That's how we've become. And when you already kind of don't like the guy, when you're not able to keep guys in town, when you're kind of fried on the place that you grew up in, you came back and won a championship, there's another team that's just better than you, there's just a limitation of the guys around you, and then you're that politically divided with the guy you're collecting checks from and making money from. Keep in mind, LeBron James is making as much or more playing for Dan Gilbert, playing in the NBA, but how LeBron sees the world. He's a man, he's a leader, he's an alpha. Everyone else benefits from his presence. The divorce proceedings, the divorce trial, oftentimes way more interesting than the marriage itself.